Can you tell us a little bit about your background and about the work that you do?
Yeah, so I'm Marinel Ubaldo again. I'm from the Philippines. I have been a climate justice advocate since 2012. So at first, I've been a child leader in our municipality, and then I have been trained to be a child facilitator. So at that time, I have been already delivering programs, educational programs to remote communities and schools about the basics of climate change and child rights and the responsibility that comes with it. Because in these remote areas, they don't have people there, don't have access to information. They don't have access to, some of them don't have access to education. And even some of them don't know that they actually have human rights, they actually have child rights. And at that point, I was like addressing climate change to be something that would happen in like 50 years or 100 years, because that what has been taught to us in school. And then 2013 happened, and I realized that climate change is already here. It's happening now. It has been killing a lot of people. And we all know that Super Typhoon Haiyan was the strongest typhoon ever recorded in human history. And Super Typhoon Haiyan killed thousands of people, and up until now there are still thousands of bodies that are still missing. Up until now we're still calling for climate justice. We're still calling for justice for the people who didn't able to survive Super Typhoon Haiyan. The Philippines experienced an average of 20 typhoons per year. So we have been trying to save our lives for like how many times in a year. But then when you speak also with the government, when you become an activist and you actually fight for your right to a safe environment, sometimes you are being tagged as terrorist because you're activist. And just in 2020, the Philippines has been tagged as the second deadliest country to be an environmentalist because of 220 plus killings of environmental defenders. Also, like, it's either you'll be killed by disaster or you'll be killed by government that is being intimidated by your presence. So up until now, we're still calling for climate justice. Up until now, we're still working with the communities, lobbying with the government, trying to make these voices from the ground be heard in World Summit, in big summit, and big conferences like COP26, and making sure that they are not just being listened but also considered in the negotiating table. Because I have been so tired of politicians telling me that they're listening, but then when you actually see the outputs that they're doing, the actions that they're doing, it does not resonate to what they're saying that they're listening. Because it's so easy to just listen, but what is hard is really taking action to the demands that have been raised. So that is kind of my background.
So Marinel, as you said earlier about the action that you've done and taken as youth for tackling all the things they are against human rights, and also speaking up about the climate change, when it comes to experiencing it firsthand, not all of us are aware enough to step up and make a move as you do, or don't even understand how and why. When we watch the news and see disaster happening somewhere and thousands are being displaced, do you think that such events happen naturally, or is it because of everything that's been done for the environment?
Whenever there is a disaster, we're being deprived of our basic right to a safe environment. We're being deprived of our basic right to education because schools are washed out, our school collapsed, and there is no schoolrooms anymore, there is no books anymore. It is depriving us of our right to save the nutritious food and water, because after emergency, after disaster, or during disaster, and until after a disaster, it is hard to get nutritious and healthy and safe food, because What happened to us after Super Typhoon Haiyan is we are just getting whatever we could find on the water. There is no safe food. We didn't have shelter. So that is depriving us of our right to have a safe shelter. If climate change continues, then there will be more of that in the future. And a lot of people are already fleeing from communities, going to another place or another country because they don't want to suffer again that way. I have seen a lot of my peers, I have seen a lot of our neighbors going to the capital in the Philippines because they don't want to stay in our community anymore because it is dangerous, because we are in the front line of every other disaster. And sometimes the reason is there is no livelihood anymore in the community because of climate change. Because of climate change, to answer your question, because of climate change, displacement and climate migration are being exacerbated because of climate change. So there will be more displacement of communities in the future. There will be more climate migration in the future because of climatic disaster if we will not address the climate crisis now.
So Marinel, do you think when human rights are better fulfilled by the state, it will give a positive impact to the environment? And how do you think so?
Yes, if we are just mindful of not just our right, but the right of other people, we will be treating the climate crisis as a crisis. Climate justice is calling on for world leaders, for rich nations to equitably, share the resources, because people in the front line, people in developing countries have also the same human rights as we all have. If I have the right to live, you and everyone else have the same right to live. If I have the right to a safe environment, you and everyone else have the right to a safe environment, and no one is entitled to get that right from us. But these big corporations, these rich nations, are profiting from the suffering of other people, are making profits, are making money from killing people because of climate change, because of the climate crisis. And I cannot just accept that I am losing loved ones, that I am losing friends, and they are profiting from that loss. And if there is an acknowledgement that actually climate change threatens human rights, that it is the biggest threat that we have right now to our human rights, climate change. So we have to tackle the climate crisis. If we are tackling our rights, if we are ensuring that everyone in the world enjoy their human rights, and in order to do that, we have to address the climate crisis. But the planet will endure. The planet will live on even without us. It does not need people. It does not need human. It will just endure millions of years. It will be here millions of years even without us. But we can live without the planet. We can live without the nature. And so we are not saving the planet. We are saving the people on the planet. At the end of the day, we need to really make sure that we protect the limited resources of our environment. And we just, consume as if it is infinite resources, not knowing that in the other side of the world, they also need to get their fair share of what we have in the environment.
Yeah. So Marinel, is there any benefit? Do you think is there any benefit for the youth participation when it comes to taking climate action?
Absolutely. They're 100% benefit, because we all know that our future is at stake. and a lot of the youth are actually fighting to reclaim our rights to a safe environment. And we are delaying our plans for the future, our dreams for the future, because we know how important it is to prioritize climate action, to make sure that our leaders are actually are actually taking the crisis as a crisis, and giving just a spot for the youth to really engage in policy lobbying would really mean so much. And we need representative from the youth that represents also sectors in the communities, that actually represent the voices of their constituents in the communities. Because, you know, maybe you have heard about the youth washing, like it is using the youth by the government, by the leaders, or by corporations, and telling us that they're actually listening to youth and they actually get like a representative. But also some of that they get are actually still represent the business interest or the profit interest, or not representing the interest of the community. And it is just, we need more platform for these grassroots youth to be heard in policy lobbying, in making legislations, because it is our future that we are talking about here. And it is not just a theory. A lot of people, we in the community, have lost so many of our friends and relatives already because of climatic disaster, and we don't want to have that again. And the adults should not, think that they know what's best for the youth and the children without even consulting them. It is, for me, it is very important that we need consultation from the ground. It is important that we just don't onboard youth on the implementation, but we onboard youth on the planning, on the coordination, the implementation, and the post-implementation. Because we need to be there on all the process that we're doing. Because we cannot just go on without even consulting the youth. We cannot just go on telling people that we're listening to the youth and we are not actually.
What are ways that you would recommend for young people to be an active advocate for the displaced communities who are most impacted by the climate change and the lack of fulfillment of human rights?
For the youth, I always say never underestimate your power to make a change. Because one person could start a movement, And if you think that you are just one, think about thousands of people who are doing the same thing around the world. And it is important that you connect with the people that share the same passion and energy with you, because the climate crisis fight, climate justice fight is a long fight. Sometimes it is exhausting, it is disappointing, it is energy draining. Most of the time you just see, the disappointments. But when you see like a positive outcome, you would feel that all of the efforts that you've put into the campaign are all worth it. Because at the end of the day, it is not just you who will benefit that. It is not just your community, your family that will benefit that. It will benefit a lot of young generation in the future and a lot of vulnerable communities around the world. And let's start that by voting for our right leaders. Let's start by registering to vote. We need to register to vote. And we need to vote because we need more allies in the government. We need more allies who are in the position that would actually enact and legislate laws and implement laws that are already there to safeguard our human right, to safeguard our environment. And we can take a lot of individual actions, and alongside with that, we need to make sure that the corporations fueling climate change, that our government, that our leaders are accountable for not taking climate action, are accountable for profiting from our suffering, or accountable for not really following the Paris Agreement. And we need more hands in the climate space. We cannot do it alone. We cannot do it by ourselves. We need more hands. We need to build a movement that is noisy enough for these leaders to hear, to consider, because we want to have a future where we are not afraid to dream, where we are not afraid to live, where we are not afraid to plan, where we are not afraid to be happy. Because at the end of the day, it is now safe to live and to actually fulfill your dreams and aspirations in life.
Yeah.